I want you to really take a second and think about the last time you tried to ask for exactly what you wanted in bed.
Oh, that is a loaded question right out of the gate.
Right. I mean, bring that very specific memory to mind. Was it a thrilling, exciting conversation? Was it, a little awkward? Or was it, if you were being totally honest with yourself, kind of terrifying?
For a lot of people, it's definitely the latter.
Yeah, because it's this moment of intense, raw vulnerability for you and your partner, and yet it is something almost every single human being has to navigate at some point.
It's arguably one of the most complex interactions two people can possibly have. I mean, so much of our relationship satisfaction, both physically and emotionally, really hinges on those exact micro moments.
Absolutely.
But the way we handle them is rarely straightforward because we bring, our entire psychological history into the room with us.
Which is exactly the core mission of this deep dive today. We are exploring the often unspoken, frankly murky world of sexual communication. We're going to decode how you actually express your desires, your boundaries, and your fears.
And we have a really incredible stack of sources to pull from for this.
We do. We're looking at a U.S. probability sample of over 1,000 women, clinical sex therapy techniques, sociological studies on body image, and even a dive into evolutionary biology.
And honestly, biology is actually the perfect place to start.
Really, biology?
Yeah, if you look at the research, sexual communication is not just a human struggle. Like even bacteria, fungi, and insects engage in really complex sexual communication.
Wait, fungi? Are we talking about mushrooms communicating?
Basically, yeah. They use chemical and physical signals to evaluate fitness, check compatibility, and, modulate their interactions. For them, signaling a preference is just a fundamental biological imperative. It is pure survival.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because bacteria definitely have it easy.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, a fungus just sends out a basic chemical signal, and its job is totally done. Humans have taken this really basic biological function, and we've just piled on psychology, fragile egos, cultural baggage, societal scripts.
Right. A bacterium doesn't lie awake wondering if its chemical signal is going to hurt another bacterium's feelings.
Exactly.
But humans do. And because we have made the actual act of signaling so psychologically fraught, we often default to the path of least resistance.
Which is just stopping talking entirely. We default to silence.
Exactly. We move away from that biological imperative to clearly signal, and instead we try to operate in the bedroom largely through a language of silence.
There's actually a fascinating study in our sources called The Silent Signals of Great Sex.
Yes, the one with the 78 participants.
Right. They analyzed the communication patterns of these 78 people, and the researchers found that people heavily prefer nonverbal cues over just using their words.
We're talking about things like arching the back, shifting the hips, moaning, or literally physically moving a partner's hand to a different spot.
And the participants in the study explained that these silent signals just they feel safer to them.
Safer and more intuitive. And critically, they feel far less likely to, quote unquote, ruin the mood.
Right, because you can give permission or try to redirect your partner's actions without ever having to form a concrete sentence.
Which takes a lot of the pressure off in the moment.
It does, but I kept thinking about this as we were reviewing the data. Relying purely on nonverbal cues is kind of like driving a car without turn signals.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like, your partner is just guessing your next move based on your speed or a slight swerve. You're just hoping they interpret your subtle hip shift correctly, and if they don't, the pressure just builds.
Yeah, you're setting them up for a guessing game.
But I push back on this in my own head. Like, is nonverbal communication inherently a bad thing? Or is it just another valid language that we speak when words feel a little too clinical?
Well, according to the research, it is absolutely a valid language. I mean, nonverbal cues are a beautiful, deeply intimate part of human connection.
Right, when you're dialed in with someone.
Exactly. When you and your partner are highly attuned, a slight shift in breathing or a lingering touch can communicate a whole paragraph of information.
So where does it go wrong?
The problem arises when silence is no longer used to express pleasure, but instead is used to mask discomfort.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that leads us into a very uncomfortable reality in the data. Because when silence masks discomfort, it frequently mutates into active deception.
It does.
I am talking about faking orgasms.
And the statistics on this are just Staggering.
They really are. We looked at a study published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, and this wasn't a small survey. This was a highly reliable U.S. probability sample of 1,008 adult women.
And they found that 58.8% of the respondents reported having faked an orgasm.
Almost 60%.
Yeah.
But what really caught my attention wasn't just that massive number. It was the mechanics behind why they do it, because it is rarely about malicious deception.
Not at all.
The top reason, cited by 57.1% of the women, was wanting their partner to feel successful.
And right behind that, 44.6% said they faked it simply because they were tired and just wanted the sex to end.
Which is so relatable, but also kind of heartbreaking.
Right. And another 37.7% said they genuinely liked the person and didn't want them to feel bad about themselves.
This connects so deeply to a concept from a University of South Florida thesis we reviewed. It explores the sociological idea of precarious manhood.
This is a really crucial piece of the puzzle.
Listener, think of precarious manhood as a status that a man has to constantly earn and defend. Society essentially tells men that their worth and identity are inherently tied to their sexual prowess.
So if a partner doesn't finish, the man doesn't just feel like a bad lover in that one moment. He feels like less of a man overall.
And the partner completely senses that fragility in the room. I mean, women are often deeply socialized to be the caretakers of their partner's ego.
Which the data from the probability sample backs up completely.
Right, because more than half of the women surveyed, 55.4%, said there were specific times they actively wanted to communicate a sexual need, but deliberately chose not to.
And their main reasons were fear of hurting their partner's feelings or just sheer embarrassment.
So what does this all mean? We are essentially prioritizing an abstract concept of masculinity or a partner's fragile ego over our own actual physical reality.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
How did we get to a point where a person would rather endure physical discomfort or lie there completely exhausted than simply say, actually, that doesn't feel good to me?
Well, the sources point to the profound consequence of social scripts. When society tells women their primary role is to be responsive and accommodating rather than being active agents of their own pleasure, speaking up feels actively dangerous.
It's a huge risk.
Right. When you combine that societal conditioning with the very real fear that your words will be interpreted as a personal attack by your partner, silence just becomes the safest emotional bunker to hide in.
But, and this is almost 70% of people eventually stop faking.
That is the best news in these sources, honestly.
It really is. The same 1008 women study found that 67.3% of the women who used to fake orgasms just stopped doing it entirely.
Which is a huge shift.
Part of me wants to assume they just, got into better, more communicative relationships. But is it actually an internal shift? Do we just run out of energy to care about egos as we age?
The research indicates it is absolutely an internal developmental shift. In fact, the data pinpoints a very specific milestone for this.
Yeah, age 25.
Age 25. That is the median age when women in the study reported finally feeling comfortable and confident enough to tell a partner exactly how they want to be touched.
Age 25. That completely blows my mind because it is so incredibly specific.
Right.
What is the mechanism there? Why does the switch flip in our mid-20s?
Well, it lines up with a few major life transitions. First, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for complex decision-making and moderating social behavior, finishes developing around age 25.
Oh, wow. So it's literal brain development.
Yes, you literally gain a better cognitive capacity to evaluate risks and benefits. And second, by your mid-20s, you have likely experienced enough relationship fatigue from performing and people-pleasing.
You're just exhausted from the charade.
Exactly. The desire for authentic, genuine connection finally begins to outweigh the fear of bruising a partner's ego. You start to really settle into your identity.
But, you don't just turn 25, blow out your birthday candles, and suddenly all your insecurities vanish.
Unfortunately, no.
Right. Even if you want that authentic connection, you still have to battle your own internal demons in the bedroom.
Precisely. And the sources highlight just how intrusive those demons can be. We looked at a really interesting study from BYU Scholars Archive focusing on body dissatisfaction.
This one was fascinating.
It really was. It showed that when you struggle with your body image, it causes a phenomenon researchers call mental distraction during intimacy.
So listener, if you've ever found yourself lying in the dark, and instead of focusing on how a touch feels, you are suddenly obsessing over the angle of the lighting on your stomach, or worrying about how your thighs look, you are experiencing mental distraction.
It completely yanks you out of the present moment.
You aren't experiencing intimacy anymore. You are spectating your own body from the outside.
And that spectator role alters your neurobiology in the moment. When you are criticizing your body, your brain releases cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Right, the stress hormone. And cortisol is the biological enemy of arousal. It plummets your sexual confidence, it reduces physical responsiveness, and it creates this massive barrier to intimacy.
And the real tragedy is this barrier has absolutely nothing to do with your partner and everything to do with the hostile internal narrative you are directing at yourself.
And we really can't ignore that cultural barriers amplify this internal narrative, too.
Right. The sources brought up the strong Black woman ideal.
Yes.
For context, this is a deeply ingrained cultural pressure on Black women to be endlessly selfless, resilient, and compliant.
And the research shows that endorsing that specific ideal actively hinders pleasure-focused assertiveness in the bedroom.
It makes total sense. I mean, it is incredibly difficult to demand what feels good for your body when society has conditioned you to believe your primary job is to endure, be strong, and provide comfort for others.
Exactly. The intersection of culture, gender, and body image creates a very tangled web. Untangling it to find your sexual voice requires deliberate effort.
But the BYU study on body dissatisfaction actually tested a fascinating, very simple intervention to help rewrite that internal narrative.
Yes, the gratitude practice.
They found that just 5 minutes of gratitude reflection about your body significantly reduced body dissatisfaction.
It serves as a powerful cognitive reset.
How does that actually work in the brain, though?
The mechanism here is that gratitude forces your brain to shift from a state of critical observation to a state of functional appreciation.
I love that.
Yep.
Functional appreciation.
By spending just 5 minutes actively appreciating what your body does for you, how it moves, how it breathes, how it allows you to experience the physical world, you decrease that cortisol-driven mental distraction.
It grounds you back in the physical reality of your body. Okay, so a 5-minute gratitude practice helps quiet the harsh voice in my own head. But how do I actually get the words out of my mouth to my partner without triggering that fragile ego we discussed earlier?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because finding my confidence is only half the battle, right? The other half is the actual science of communicating with another human being.
Thankfully, the data here offers a very clear roadmap on what works. A study published in Psychology Today found that sharing your turn-ons, meaning specifically telling your partner what you want more of, what you already enjoy, or fantasies you want to explore, dramatically boosts sexual satisfaction.
And overall relationship intimacy.
Yes, both of them.
And the sources note this is especially powerful for closing the orgasm gap.
Which is a huge issue in sexual health.
Yeah, for the listener who might not be familiar with that term, the orgasm gap refers to the well-documented disparity in how often heterosexual men climax compared to heterosexual women during intimate encounters.
And communicating turn-ons is the most effective tool to close that gap because it relies heavily on positive reinforcement.
Right.
When you disclose a turn-on, you are giving your partner a roadmap paved with enthusiasm. It actually releases dopamine for both of you.
Because they feel successful knowing exactly how to please you and you get your needs met.
Exactly. Conversely, focusing on turn-offs can completely derail the situation.
It backfires almost every time, doesn't it?
It really does. If we look at broader relationship psychology, specifically John and Julie Gottman's 4 Horsemen model of communication, highlighting a dislike almost always sounds like criticism to the receiving partner.
And when a partner hears criticism, their immediate biological response is defensiveness.
Always. And the moment defensiveness enters the bedroom, the emotional safety evaporates and the physical connection dies right along with it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because thinking about it practically, it is exactly like reviewing a restaurant with your partner.
Okay, I like this analogy.
Right. You get way further by saying, oh, I love the pasta dish, let's definitely order that again, rather than just yelling at them because they chose a bland appetizer.
That's spot on.
You aren't critiquing the chef. You are just collaboratively guiding them toward the good stuff on the menu.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism of positive reinforcement. You are building on success rather than punishing failure. But, however, the clinical sources are very clear that there is one crucial, non-negotiable exception to this rule of focusing on the positive.
Boundaries.
Yes. When it comes to physical pain, safety, or your personal boundaries, you must communicate your dislikes directly and without hesitation.
In those specific instances, clarity is the highest form of caring for both yourself and the relationship.
Absolutely.
The Center for Growth provided some amazing clinical advice on how to actually execute this in the heat of the moment. They break it down into a soft exit versus a direct verbal boundary.
A direct verbal boundary is required when a hard line is being crossed. It is saying clearly, stop, or let's pause, or I'm not comfortable with this. It halts the action immediately.
But the soft exit is such a brilliant tool for everyday use. Listener, a soft exit is for when you enjoy your partner, you feel perfectly safe, but maybe you just aren't into what's happening physically in that exact moment.
Which is totally normal.
Right. You want to shift gears without killing the emotional connection. So you stop the physical act, but you immediately bridge the intimacy by saying something like, hey, I'm feeling a little distracted. Let's grab some wine and just talk about our day.
Or let's put on that movie we wanted to watch.
Exactly. You are exiting the sexual act, but you are not exiting the relationship.
And the success of a soft exit relies entirely on the partner's reaction because communication is a two-way street.
It takes two to tango.
Yeah. The magic ingredient that makes this entire ecosystem of communication work is what researchers call autonomy support.
Autonomy support.
Right. It means the receiving partner listens without judgment, respects the no or the soft exit without layering on guilt or pressure, and provides choices.
And when you know your partner provides autonomy support, the perceived risks of speaking up just vanish. You feel safe.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's bring this all the way down to earth. Now we know what to say. Focus on the turn-ons, use soft exits, ensure autonomy support. But how do you actually put this into practice?
If a listener wants to try this tonight, where do they even begin without feeling completely awkward?
Yeah, how do we skip the awkward phase?
Well, you have to start extremely small. The Mayo Clinic actually suggests instituting a strict 15-minute time limit for conversations about sex outside of the bedroom.
15 minutes, just a timer.
Yep. If this is new territory for your relationship, you do not want it to turn into a sprawling, overwhelming State of the Union address.
So 15 minutes, get in, get out.
They also suggest using a movie scene or a chapter in a book as a neutral conversation starter to lower the stakes.
So you just say, hey, what did you think of how they handled that intimacy scene in the movie?
Exactly. It makes the topic abstract before making it personal.
It entirely removes the immediate vulnerability.
But if you are ready for a more physical, practical exercise, the clinical sex therapy techniques from the Center for Growth offer a structured method called the sensate focus technique.
Originally developed by the famous sex researchers Masters and Johnson.
Right. And it is broken down into 7 distinct stages.
We are going to focus just on stage 1 today because it is fascinating. Stage 1 is a back massage broken into strict 5-minute segments. But the absolute most important rule of stage 1, no genitals allowed.
None.
I have to admit, I want to push back on this a little bit. Taking sex completely off the table sounds like the exact opposite of sexual communication.
It does seem counterintuitive.
Yeah, how does purposefully frustrating yourselves lead to better intimacy?
The mechanism is actually brilliant. By explicitly banning genital touch and removing the possibility of sex, you completely eliminate performance anxiety.
Oh, because there's no end goal.
Right. There is no finish line. There is no orgasm gap to worry about. The pressure to perform or achieve a specific goal is gone, which frees up your brain to actually focus on the sensation of touch and the act of communicating about that touch.
It turns the volume down on the pressure so you can actually hear each other.
Exactly. And within this stage, they provide specific, structured games to practice communicating.
My favorite is the A-B game. The giver touches the receiver in 2 slightly different ways. Choice A and choice B. And the receiver must choose which one they prefer.
It eliminates all the guesswork we talked about earlier. You are forcing a clear preference in an environment where the stakes couldn't possibly be lower.
It's just a back massage.
Right. Another exercise is a 5-minute segment of selfish touch. The giver touches the partner solely in the way that turns the giver on, exploring textures and pressure, while the receiver stays completely silent.
Oh, that's interesting.
It teaches the giver to connect with their own desires rather than just performing for the partner.
And then there's the moan-groan game, which directly addresses the nonverbal cues we started this whole deep dive with.
Yes. The receiver exaggerates their noises to signal enjoyment, creating an intentional feedback loop.
But I have to bring this up because it made me laugh out loud when reading the clinical notes.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
The advice states that if the receiver is too uncomfortable or embarrassed to make exaggerated sexual noises, the certified sex therapist literally tells them to try mooing like a cow or clucking like a chicken instead.
It sounds utterly absurd, I know. But from a clinical neurological perspective, it is incredibly effective.
Wait, so a medical professional is telling you to cluck like a chicken in bed if you're nervous. I love that so much.
It works.
It completely strips away the intense, heavy pressure to perform perfectly and just makes it about human connection. I mean, you cannot possibly take yourself too seriously or worry about your fragile ego if you are clucking.
That is exactly the point. It completely shatters the ice. It helps the person realize the immense power of using sound as a feedback loop for their partner, but it entirely removes the anxiety of trying to sound sexy or performative.
It reintroduces playfulness into an arena that we humans have made far, far too serious.
I really have.
It is amazing how much ground we've covered today. We started with the basic biological impulse of a fungus to communicate, waded through the complicated ego-driven waters of human silence and faked orgasms.
And we discovered the science behind the age 25 cognitive shift.
Right. We unpacked the neurobiology of how a 5-minute gratitude practice can quiet the cortisol in our brains, and how focusing on turn-ons releases the dopamine needed to build a genuine connection.
And finally, we explored how to safely practice all of this with a 15-minute timer, the A-B game, and maybe a few barnyard animal noises to keep things in perspective.
It really is a journey from performative silence to authentic connection. And it leaves us with a final vital concept to consider from the Respark group regarding emotional safety.
Yes, this specific thought really lingered with me after going through the sources.
It's powerful.
We often tell ourselves that we stay silent in bed because we are trying to protect our partner's feelings. We think we are saving the relationship from conflict.
Right.
But if true emotional safety is the actual foundation of great intimacy, you have to ask yourself, does protecting your relationship with silence actually destroy the very intimacy it is trying to save?
Wow. That really is the ultimate question. If you are constantly filtering yourself, are you really connecting with your partner at all, or just connecting with a carefully curated version of yourself?
It's something to think about.
It definitely is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, listener. Keep exploring, keep talking, and maybe try the A-B game tonight.